Welcome back to the show with no name, and let's see.
Starting a new year.
Starting a new year. This is January. We're filming this on January the 6th, 2012. First of all, I'd like to wish a happy Feast of the Three Kings for those of you who celebrate the traditional Feast of the Epiphany. And also a very happy birthday to my daughter Anna, who was born on this day some many years ago, my firstborn child. It's not so many years ago, for those of you who are interested.
Be careful what you say.
No, she's a lovely girl. She's the apple of my eye, and I vividly remember the day she was born. I had opened my office in Amsterdam on the 5th of January, went into private practice, solo private practice on the 5th of January, and then later we were having, it was my sister's birthday, the 5th of January. It was also my Louisa's birthday yesterday, but that was some years later. So we're having a birthday party for my sister at my mother's house. And, around the time dessert's being offered, Mary's saying, I've got a backache. I think we should go home. So we were living in Albany at the time, got in the car and we're driving home. And every once in a while she complained about the backache. And when we got home, it began to dawn on me that she's complaining about the backache at regular intervals. So I took out the stopwatch and started timing the intervals between which she complained about her backache, and realized what was going on, being the astute fellow I am who had taken all the necessary courses on the subject. And So we go to bed, but, because they're far enough apart at this point. We go to bed, and after a while, about 3 in the morning, I call the doctor. Tell him how far apart the backaches were, and he said, well, okay. He says, well, let's do this. It sounds like things are under control. You should come on over to the hospital, St. Peter's Hospital in Albany, about 8 in the morning. Yeah, about 6:30, I took matters into my own hands, threw her in the car, and we went over there. And it's a good thing because she was born before 8 o'clock. And there was one point, I don't know whether it was a change of shift or something. We're in the delivery room, and all of a sudden, I'm the only one for just a moment, but I was the only one in the delivery room with her. And the doctor comes in. He does a preliminary perfunctory examination, and suddenly jumps up and says, I better get scrubbed up, and he disappeared. So everything came out fine, and we learned it was a girl. I said, are you sure? He says, well, I've done a number of these, Mr. Nolan. What a stupid question.
That was before the days when they could take a picture before the baby was born and tell you, or you chose to find out?
We had the ultrasound, but it was some months previous. And then there was a second one done. I guess it wasn't obvious. It wasn't obvious in the picture, so we really did not know. We thought it was a girl, but it was not. It was not obvious. And I remember Mary coming home from the doctor after the ultrasound, and as she's watching the image, which you don't see on the still, the baby is sucking her thumb. Jeepers.
I think you lost the picture over there.
Oh, what do these people want now? You want to allow the founder to take charge of this computer? No. Okay. All right, we're on anyway. That was just, they want to update the programming. Anyway, so here we are. Here we are on our first show of the new year. And we're rapidly coming to our first anniversary. Our first show, our first podcast was toward the end of January of last year.
Really?
Yeah, it was. We got kicked off the other place about the 11th of January, and And we've been here since 2 weeks after that. So, yeah, it was like, I don't know, 22nd of January or something was our first show. Something like that.
Time's phone, you're having flies, huh?
It doesn't seem like it's been that
that
long.
was one we did over at the Europa, and right now we're at the Go Where I've Been Coffee House and Polish Deli at the Lower Upper Church Street in Amsterdam, having a great cup of coffee and well, a definition of sarcasm. Well, it's not a definition. It says yet another free service I offer.
But this is a good one here. Give me coffee and no one gets hurt.
Yeah.
No coffee, no service.
Wow.
Succinct.
So here we are. I don't know if anything exciting has happened in the last week.
Well, they've had the Iowa caucus.
Yeah. We did have the Iowa caucus. We could get into that. I think before we get into that, though, I really want to get into...
They had problems in the sandbox last week.
That's it. I did arrive a little late for the County Board of Supervisors meeting. I can't even remember the last time I attended one. I think I was social services attorney at the time. It was had to have been, decades ago probably. So I had not been to one in some time, and I arrived just as it appeared to me that the formal meeting was getting started. The new chairman, Shane Walters from the town of Charleston, had taken his seat and had just begun a little opening address on what he hoped to accomplish in his term as chairman of the Board of Supervisors. And I look around the room, and I at first did not see where the Fifth Ward supervisor was sitting, and it turned out he was sitting in the front row of the audience. And there was no one seated on either side of him, so I went and sat down next to him. And I leaned over and I said, "Did you refuse to take the oath?" I mean, and I only got just a little bit of what had happened because the meeting was going on, and he didn't want to talk. But
got a Chiarian answer, huh?
So anyway, Michael was very well behaved at the meeting, as those of us who know him well would expect him to be, because when he's in an official position, he's very
professional.
Very professional is exactly the word I was looking for, and he was, and not everyone was at that meeting. Apparently, before I got there had been two things had happened. Number one. Supervisor Barone of the 3rd Ward, who doesn't like anybody telling him he can't have his way about anything, decided to take Michael's desk, the desk assigned to the 5th Ward supervisor. And apparently they actually have written rules about these things, so the sandbox thing couldn't have just started. They actually have a written rule about who gets what desk under what circumstances and all that. So, but Barone rules aren't important. He just seizes the desk, ostensibly because he wants to sit next to DeMezza.
His friend. He got to sit next to his friend.
One of them's telling the other one what to do, I guess. And there was. So anyway, so that happened, and he says, "You sit over there," he says to Michael, and meaning his old desk. He says, "I'm the supervisor of the 5th Ward, not the supervisor of the 3rd Ward." Barone refused to yield, so Michael sat in the audience. Proceeded from there, took his oath. What is that? That's not.
That's her telephone.
Oh, it's her telephone. And then they proceed to elect the chairman. Now, you recall, because we talked about this, there was a Republican caucus, like the week before this. I think it was down at the Best Western, or whatever it's called now, the America's Best Value Inn, formerly the Holiday Inn, for those of you who really want to know what I'm talking about. And it was agreed that Walters would be the chairman among the Republicans, who control the majority of the board.
Right.
After the meeting, you recall, the 4th Ward supervisor, Barbara Wheeler, made some somewhat intemperate remarks about Mr. Walters, and but that was it. And basically, everybody had pledged to support the winner of the caucus. Well, of course, de Meza's not in the Republican caucus. He's in the Baya caucus. And the Baya caucus had their own meeting, apparently. And they decided to put Ron Barone up. And the Baya caucus apparently is now down to 3 people, de Meza, Barone, and Wheeler. And that's how many people voted for Ron Barone for supervisor. So it was all done to basically, and they knew they couldn't win, so I guess they did it just to insult Walters, which is a great way to start the year for no purpose whatsoever. And then de Meza refused to take any committees because he didn't want to serve under Walters or some crazy thing like that. And so he's not on any committees and denouncing everything. He was frankly a big baby through the whole meeting. Yeah. Then they do a series of votes on stuff. Well, I'm here sitting there, I don't know what's going on. I'm sitting next to Michael, leaning over and whispering to him occasionally, and all of a sudden this broad and diverse coalition has come together on certain issues and close votes. And you know, they moved to eliminate a position or two and downgrade another position to save money at the first meeting of the year. This is the first day of the budget also, first day of the budget year. And meanwhile, of course, the people who want to protect their friends are yelling and screaming, they can't, it's outrageous, blah, 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 and the votes are really close, but even the procedural votes, and they're all going the same way. And Michael's voting with a majority on every single issue. Okay? So the coalition, and I mean, this is a loose coalition that will not obviously be together for every issue. But it includes Democrats, it includes Republicans, it includes people from the city, it includes people from the towns, from big towns, small towns. You can't say, looking at this coalition that got together to cut the government spending, that this was a coalition of up county versus down county, or Republicans versus Democrats, or haves versus have-nots, or 1% versus the 99. It wasn't any of that stuff. So I was impressed the way it came down, and I'm thinking as I'm sitting there, I guess Congressman Tonko was, I think he came in after me because I didn't see him when I came in, but I didn't see the mayor either, and she was there also. I didn't notice she was there until I saw her car in the parking lot afterwards. So there were a lot of people in the room. County clerk was there, her husband. But I'm thinking, you know, I'm wondering if there are people in this room who see me sitting here whispering to Michael, who think I'm orchestrating everything that's going on, because I'm like sitting directly opposite the chairman. So you know, if I was orchestrating it, I could put you know, and then this one would get up and I move that we take move from budget item number A-077094362 to da 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 da. Well, I had nothing to do with that. I didn't know what was going on. Much like that incident in high school.
Now, it would seem then, as it was indicated in other places, that with a coalition of this type existing and working together, they must have gotten together at some point in time prior to the meeting. It was not a spontaneous combustion.
It clearly wasn't spontaneous. And I'm sure that different of them were talking to each other at different times, and certain people were interested in certain things and certain people were interested in other. But I really doubt. Well, first of all, I almost doubled over in laughter at de Meza complaining that a handful of people were getting together to decide everything behind closed doors, because that's all he's done for the entire while he's been there. And we know where they meet, you know, and who's there, and who picks up the tab. I mean, we know all this stuff. So anyway, I doubt very much that the, I don't know, 7 or 8 of them, I don't even know if there's that many, all got together at one place at one time. I don't think so. I don't think so. No, well, I mean, you know, Michael has been a friend of Stagliano's for a long time, Dominic Stagliano. Quackenbush from town of Minden and Jeff Stark are cousins, which makes Quackenbush one of your relatives indirectly and one of mine indirectly. Let's try to explain to Quackenbush, hey, Goomba, let me tell you how we're related. But apparently their grandmothers were sisters, okay? Something like that. Yeah, I guess, because Dick Stark, Jeff's father, and Quackenbush's father were sitting together and they're first cousins. Yeah, on their respective mother's sides. But you're related through the Stark side,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Dick Stark was an uncle.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so there. I mean, some of these people are friends and colleagues and talking anyway, and you know, Jeff and Michael talk, obviously. So if I were to say who was basically moving things along, just from my observation, I would say it was Quackenbush and Stark, a Republican and a Democrat, up County City, who happen to be related, like each other, and have a common philosophy with respect to the certain matters in county government. So I think they were probably the promoters. Walters was along with it, and you know, maybe half of the other up county supervisors.
It was meant by weighted votes, but it was 10 people against 5 people. That's the way the vote went, and from what I was reading. But it was weighted votes for the 5 people.
Well, yeah.
So it took.
Well, DeMeza obviously. Obviously DeMeza has a huge weighted vote.
Yeah.
He's got the biggest weighted vote in the county, I think. The city supervisors have pretty big weighted votes. So you had DeMeza, Wheeler, Grieco, and Barone as the big weighted votes. They also had the town of Florida on their side on most of these issues. The other side had town of Minden, which is a good size. Town of Canajoharie is a good size. Charleston is next to nothing, but they also had Michael and Jeffrey, whose weighted votes are similar to the other supervisors. So that's what made it close, and then the others kind of balanced out. So it was really a mixture of heavy and light weighted votes.
Now, looking at the vote, are they going in the right direction to salvage the county?
I think so. Yeah. And I think on other issues, I mean, these were a couple of personnel issues where people's friends were involved and things like that. I mean, you know, one of the persons they bounced was Marco Zumbolo, who's been there a long time. And so, you know, he's got his own supporters. And he's a good guy. I mean, he's a competent guy. And they just decided there was a way to do it cheaper, and that's what they need to look at right now. I think on other issues, they're going to pick up other supervisors when it comes to economizing. I really do. So I'm somewhat confident. I also think the legislature is going to be forced to take over most, if not all, of the Medicaid costs that have been the county share. Because that's what's bankrupting the counties. It's really the runaway Medicaid costs, because we have absolutely no control of it. All we do is collect the applications. And once somebody qualifies, there's the county has no say whatsoever in how much money gets paid out. We're just sent a bill, and it's hard to budget for that sort of thing, and it's impossible to control the increase in cost.
It's going to be a very interesting year in the county.
Yep.
Especially with they're starting with the budget as of today.
Yep. And that's something that
has never happened before.
Has never happened
they
before.
Always wait to the
they say, well, you know, and Domestic could say, well, we can review these things when we do the budget. Well, we're going to do the budget in October, you know. Start now. Build up your surplus.
Start interviewing them now to just see where the money's got to go, where it can't go.
All right, we got troubles. Okay, we had a little interruption there because we had some sound problems, and we continue to have sound problems, but at least you can hear us off the microphone on the camera instead of the microphones on the table. But that's the way it's going to work when things don't go right. So everybody speak up a little bit louder than we usually do and see if we get thrown out. What were we talking about? Anybody remember?
Yeah.
The last was the county.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we're going to talk anymore about the county. You got anything more to say about the county?
No, but it's going to take a lot of hard work, and for them to look at all the P's and Q's to find out what we really need to do, and not do some of the things just because we want to do them.
Yep.
Because the tipping scale is tipping, and it's tipping the wrong direction, and it's going to take a lot of work and cooperation within the entire county to get that accomplished. And
well, the last thing we need is attitudes right now. And I would say most everyone on that board of supervisors, people I agree with and disagree with or whatever, have got a good attitude toward doing what they're doing. There's maybe 3 who don't. And fortunately, they're mostly being ignored at this point. Also caught the Common Council meeting this week. I don't often watch that on television, but I was convinced that I should.
was it worth your time? Was it enlightening? Did it show you what the city of Amsterdam looks like?
The latter, yes.
The enlightening part was that I've come to the conclusion, being on the council at one time, is I don't think they know really what their job is. They don't know the charter. They don't know any of the laws that pertain to the city. And I don't expect them to know everything. But when they vote on something, I expect that they should know the law about what they're voting on.
Or at least what the resolution is about.
Or what the resolution is about.
Now, I'm sure that Dave Divers made a lot of enemies. Did you watch your show?
No, I didn't watch it. I just read about it.
Yes, I watched it.
Okay. I'm sure Dave Divers made a lot of enemies at that meeting.
But he had
and I'm not sure that he was wrong about a single thing that he said. He could have said it
in a different way?
A little more diplomatically. I think he got a little personally testy a couple of times. But, you know, like that guy from the Midwest went to the Senate. I didn't come here to get along, I came here to get things done. And his points, I think, were very well taken. But he did it in a way that kind of embarrassed some of the others. He said, "Can you tell me what this resolution is for?" No, you know, people are moving resolutions and they don't even know what they're about.
They're presenting resolutions that they don't know what they are, and that's the sad part. The other thing is,
how about the one about the banks? That's the one that got me. The resolution that essentially said we're going to continue with the contracts we have with the banks until we change them. And he just raises his hand. What banks do we have contracts with? What do they say? How much money is each one handling? What are their obligations? What are and all he got was
yeah. That was the best point he made.
It was an excellent point
in all of his
and finally the answer was because we always adopt this resolution at the first meeting.
Just because you've always done it doesn't mean it's been right any time at all.
No, exactly right. And I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but you know, I had a couple of occasions where I was involved in preparing the agendas for these first meetings of the year, and I got to tell you, I went through the same questions that he did. Why are we doing this? What is this resolution for? What does it mean? And then, since the meeting, I somehow came across a 1916 copy of the first minutes of the first meeting of the year of the Common Council, and I'm reading these resolutions, and this is exactly the same resolution they were passing in 1916. And the fact of the matter is, most of this stuff just keeps getting passed at the beginning of each new term without anybody giving any thought to what it's about at all. In the old days, you used to say, this bank shall have up to $50,000, this same bank shall, and the purpose was, and of course they were all local banks at the time, Montgomery County Trust, Farmers National, whatever. Yeah, go ahead.
How much prior to the council meeting did you receive the resolutions that are going to be voted on?
Okay. They are supposed to be
In the Corporation Council office by Wednesday.
right. People who want resolutions, in order to get them on the agenda, have to have them in the Corporation Council's office by Wednesday.
Right.
The Corporation Council has to have them done by like noon on Friday, something like that. And that was what we usually did.
So Friday afternoon, I can go down and pick up my
You should be able to do it.
and examine it before the board meeting on Tuesday.
Friday noon. Friday at noon.
Correct. Now, you understand that, City Hall was closed on Monday, but the stuff should have been there anyway. And they could have gone to City Hall with their keys and gotten the stuff.
But him refusing to be the audit chair. Now, the audit chair, all he does is he takes all the warrants and it matches them up with the invoices. So to make sure there's an invoice for that particular check that they're going to write. And if there's something that looks suspicious, he can ask the question. But normally, all he does is say, yeah, there's an invoice for a purchase order and invoice for X number of garage. And then there's a check that's going to go in for that amount. And he's supposed to check the amounts match. And that's about it. And also looking at petty cash, which is important. Because petty cash is only supposed to be up to $500, I believe.
And his reason for not wanting to be the chairman was?
That he didn't know if there was enough money to cover them.
In the accounts.
In the accounts.
Because he hasn't seen?
Yeah, but I don't think that's his...
Well, I've never really looked closely at these, but the vouchers themselves should have the accounts that the money's taken out of.
Yes, they have the accounts that are taken out.
And the controller's not supposed to pay anything that there's not a budget line for.
Right.
And yet we know they do.
But, well, in the last, I'm not sure what meeting it was, but they're supposed to have, whenever there's a resolution where money is being changed hands, there's supposed to be a list of that account and how much is left in that account.
Yeah.
Right?
And is there?
How is a council member supposed to know that? I mean, if that resolution comes through because the controller says there's money there,
Yeah.
is it the council member's job to go in there and see if there's money? He said there's money, so you have to take his word for it.
You have to have a level of trust.
Yeah, he's supposed to be the guy in charge of that.
Now here's the other thing. He said, I've asked the controller for this or that information and been told it's not available. And then there's Vicky, who's the elected city controller, says I got the password to the general ledger account at 3:30 this afternoon. On Tuesday, January 2nd. I suppose you can say, well, those things happen, but he should have had that.
He tried to get it ahead of time.
Yeah, he should have had that last Friday, so we could at least take a look at it, even if not, if he was not able to change anything.
Well, I understand he's tried to get that password for.
As a matter of fact, since the election, he should have been allowed read-only access to the accounts, and he was not, and that's outrageous and incredibly stupid.
And your point is?
The other thing is
the CEO.
The annual update statement. The AUD. That doesn't sound right, but I think it's called the AUD.
I think it is. Yeah.
The annual update is supposed to be completed and filed with the state controller's office within 90 days of the close of the fiscal year, so that you can see what your fund balance is, among other things, how the fund balance is allocated, how much of it is cash and how much of it is the money we haven't collected, how much is collectible, all those things. That's supposed to be done on an annual basis, 90 days within 90 days after the close of the fiscal year. Well, 6 months into the fiscal year, they still don't have it. They have no idea whatsoever. Nobody has any idea what is in the city's fund balance, if anything. And that's also outrageous.
Some level of incompetence taking place there.
Yes, sir.
They can't run a business in that manner.
That's right.
Not knowing how much you got in your pocket.
And yet they continue to spend, and say, well, we'll take that out of the fund balance. What fund balance?
We don't know if there's any money in the fund balance.
I blame half of this problem on the mayor because she's supposed to be the head of the city. And if there's not an answer, she should be getting the answer somewhere.
The state needs to come in and do a thorough audit of the books, frankly, every time a controller leaves office. This was standard procedure in the courts. That when a clerk of the court left, when the courts that handle money, when the clerk of the court left, the first thing the new judge would do it's usually a new judge and a new clerk in the older ones, but the first thing we'll do is ask the state to come in and audit the books and find out if they're in balance, if they're out of whack, is all the money there that's supposed to be there, how is this done? If you don't do that, stuff can get carried over for generations improperly. And they don't care as long as there's a pot of money and the checks don't bounce, they think it doesn't make any difference.
So, you should have your eyes last a long time instead of getting
But Your Honor, the check couldn't have bounced. I still have 3 checks left.
So it's going to be an interesting. First few months at City Hall.
The other thing Doug said was in the paper this morning is he wants to look at changing some of the rules about the Common Council's procedures, including having more stuff discussed at committee meetings before coming out onto the floor, so everybody doesn't look like they don't know what they're talking about. He may have worded, as I say, he may have worded these things a little bit more diplomatically than he did, but he's not wrong about that. I mean, how many times do they go and you can tell that nobody knows what they're voting on. They just vote aye because somebody wanted them to, right?
The other question he had, he says, did the 8 board members, he wanted a resume for each person.
Sausage and cheese.
Yeah, we're appointing all these members to the board. Does anybody know who any of them are or what their qualifications are, or is this the best person for the position? And who made those decisions as to who to appoint?
It's the council's voting on the particular members. I don't care if they have a resume a mile long.
Makes its way out.
If we got 3 members on that board, on that council who want that, they're going to vote for them.
But there are some things that logic says should not be done when new people are stepping in the shoes off the bat. Because people need to know what's going on before you can make a decision.
Right.
And something like that should be done at the end of the first quarter of the fiscal year, so that you've got people coming to the board who have an opportunity to order their jobs and the jobs of other people to make an informed decision to see that the people that put in positions are qualified. But and some of these other things that you mentioned about money's in there, some of these things should be off a half a step so that people can actually make an informed decision, so they know what they got to work with before they say yes or no. That'd be
40% of this council is brand new.
Right.
On the council.
And they are feeling their way along. And that's acceptable. We don't expect you to know everything, but you have to be able to learn about what you have to do at a point so you can do it, not have it rammed down your throat and have to step onto it from the get-go.
I don't think they should have appointed members to the ADA board this first meeting.
I don't either. There was no need to do that.
No.
It's not like there was a huge vacancy problem
You
there.
can do that at any time during the
Right,
year.
anytime.
Okay.
And because they got a couple people there, I don't believe, well, I shouldn't even say, I don't believe are qualified to run the ADA board.
Is this standard procedure appointment at this point in time?
No.
Or is this something
No, it
that
isn't.
somebody say, you know what, let it get it
Right,
done?
right.
Because it might be easier to get it done when you don't know than it is to get it done when you do know.
Right.
So that would come from your CEO probably.
Now, and then of course, because probably because divers can be a little irritating.
Oh, that's probably it then.
Everybody gets their defense up instead of addressing the issue. The question is not whether you like him or you don't like him. Is he right or wrong? And so the first comment comes out of Joe Isabel. Well, there's nothing wrong with the way we do things. Everything works fine. Well, anybody who's watched how the Common Council's acted in the last 4 years can't possibly make that statement with a straight face, because things aren't going right. There is nobody's in control. They seem to drift one way and drift another, and it couldn't be more clear than in the budget process. Maybe things do need to be addressed. Maybe we do need to get people in here to discuss why things are being asked to be done the way we're asking them to be done, and what their advantages and what are the disadvantages, instead of just going there and rubber stamping whatever. And it's not like there's any ideology here. It's just like I have seen an awful lot of council members just going in there and voting without giving anything a single thought.
Yeah, oh, it seems like a good idea. It seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Why is it a good idea? Divers will say, and then there's
I've been saying that for 4 years. I've been saying that for 4 years. There's absolutely no rhyme or reason how they do things or why they do it.
Well.
That's the way of politics in the country.
The first meeting is mostly ceremonial and stuff, and I understand that. But if they just keep doing things the way they were, things are not going to happen.
It sets the tone for the rest of the year.
It does. It does indeed.
The thing that made me laugh the most, though, about the meeting was when they were taking the vote and they were going, the young person said,
I thought you guys like
And then, of course, there's the corporation council issue.
Gee whiz, Bob.
What's the issue, Bob? I mean, he was voted out.
Right.
They have 90 days to replace him, and the mayor cannot keep.
No, she cannot keep reappointing him, despite what it said in the paper today, or what he may have told. And to have them all sit there and have the corporation council, whose term expired 3 days earlier, explain to them why they can't get rid of him is preposterous. He may be right, he may be wrong, but for them to just accept that as gospel when he has the clearest conflict of interest of anybody in the world in making the opinion.
Just keep it.
And I will compare this to the way Doug Landon handled a similar situation at the county meeting.
I understand too on the second floor.
Because he was up for reappointment,
Yeah.
and in the reappointment it mentioned his salary. He's reappointed at a salary of X number of dollars. And Quackenbush, Supervisor Quackenbush raises the question, just so we all know, if we adopt this resolution as is, does this mean we are locked into the salary for the 2 years of your term, or is it possible, to lower it if circumstances require? And Doug was taken aback a little bit, and then just actually laughed out loud, and he said, well, I should preface my remarks by pointing out that I have a rather obvious conflict of interest in answering this question. And then he said, but yes, I believe that that's what that means. Okay.
He was honest enough to say.
Yes, and Jerry was just like arrogant
so
about
pompous.
it. Yeah. You can't do anything to me as long as the mayor doesn't appoint somebody else. Well,
They've got
So-
90 days,
But Paul Barrett made it.
and they don't have to wait the 90 days, do they?
I think they do, yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Well,
They do.
Yeah, because it's the mayor's appointment.
Yeah, she's got.
Now let's get
Well, you know,
sensitive.
he was gonna go wrestle at school.
I certainly don't wish any personal harm on Jerry. He's a friend of mine. His wife's a relative of mine, which makes her indirectly a relative of yours, Gavin.
So there's a conflict.
Is,
So I don't
is this a conflict of interest that we're discussing?
Yeah,
It probably is.
But if it weren't, we would say.
But the practical thing for the mayor to do is not fight over every issue.
Right, stick a stick in their eye.
Right, and that's what she'd be doing if she said, well, I can find a loophole to get around what the charter clearly says is your prerogative, okay? It is, whether it's legally plausible, it's morally wrong. And what she needs to do, I mean, the council members have made it clear that they are prepared to appoint a Democrat who is acceptable to them. It's not a Republican-Democrat thing. It's strictly this guy. And so really, if she wants to be a reasonable person and show that she can cooperate with this council and work together with the council, she's not going to stick the needle in their eye over this issue. She could. I think they would be very comfortable if she said, "Look, you know, I owe this guy. I'd like to keep him on for the 90 days, and then I'll appoint somebody else, and we'll all move on." That's what she should do, and that's my advice to her. And I still haven't got that call.
You didn't change your number.
I haven't changed my number. No, I'm 7745878. Oh, maybe I gave my wife's number. Did I do that? Maybe I accidentally gave my wife's number, and she probably already told her no.
Oh,
Okay.
That's
All right, that could be. 7748786.
Now, not asking to be a fortune teller, but if it goes down, who would she put up? Who would be a good choice?
I would.
Okay.
Yes.
There are a number of people who have served on the job previously. A couple of them are Democrats. One is Paul Wallman. He served at the job and handled it quite competently. Bill Norman served for a year or so under Mayor DeChessie. And myself, we're all former corporation councils.
So there's people out there that can do the job in a professional manner.
Yeah, I'm not sure, you know, I'm losing track of time. I'm not sure whether Bethany Schulman has 5 years in that is required for the job as an attorney. I think she's got to be close if she isn't.
I would think so.
I would think so. I'm just losing track of time.
No, I don't think she has 5 years. Because
Well,
I think
I'm not
she was admitted to the bar during. Yeah, that's right. That's close.
Yeah, it's close. She may be over. You know, I have my differences with Bethany. You know, of course, she's a Democratic county chairman, so I'm always going to have my differences with her. But I don't think she would be incompetent to handle the job. She might be a little bit more political than you might want, or she might resign the chairmanship to take the job. Who knows? But she's always impressed me, even before she became a lawyer, as somebody who has the interest in local laws and
She
things
took
like
the job
that.
when she was supervisor.
Yeah, she did. She did. So I think she would be competent to handle the position. I think she'd be a little tougher sell than the other two. I'm just thinking who the Democratic attorneys are. You got young Bill Misek is available, and I'm not sure where he's living now, but I guess, of course, Rose said he would appoint him, so I'm assuming he's living in the city. And he would be competent. I'm not sure he's got his 5. I guess he must have his 5. I don't see this. He has 5 years. Because he got, he started young. Yeah, well, yeah, he must, because Anna's 31. He was in Anna's 31 today. Yeah. Oh, yeah, he must have it. Yeah. Or very close to it.
So there are people out there that could do it.
Yeah.
And
Confidently.
work with all.
And
the
I'm just
people.
talking about the Democrats here. I mean, there may even be others I'm not thinking about. Yeah. Rich Weinheimer lives in the city now, and he's Rich Weinheimer. He used to live up in Fort Plain. He ran for supervisor up there a couple of times. He's a Democrat. Been around for a while. So, yeah, there are people who can do the job. And if that's a big issue with the council, she should get over that issue now and then have a peaceful 4 years. Because, frankly, he's been the source of most of the controversy.
And he can still be her advisor behind the door.
Of course.
And the Chalmers building is still not down.
Well, it's coming. At least they're working on it.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go. Of course, I have no idea how much time we've got in this show anymore because I turned the clock off. We know by 12 o'clock we will not have been here in 2 hours. So we've probably barely got an hour in at this point if we've got that. So what else is going on?
You mentioned that you were with your good friend Dave Petruccia.
Oh, I had a lovely time in New York the last couple of days. I went down to, well, it's a good bureaucracy in action. The whole purpose of my going down was to New York City, was to video record. I can't say videotape anymore. It's hard to think of what to say. I can't say film because it's not record. There's no film. There's not even a Kodak. So to record his talk on Arnold Rothstein, the gangster, David had written a book some years ago called Rothstein: The Life and Times of the Criminal Genius Who Fixed the 1919 World Series. And so he's been invited down. The book has been reissued by the publisher. So they arranged this event at the New York Public Library. So we go down there. This was Wednesday night, and there were 95 people in the room came to this presentation, to the library to see this talk. It was amazing. Well, I start to set the equipment up, and this flunky bureaucrat comes over and says, "You're not allowed to videotape unless you get permission from the library." Okay, you know. I said I'm doing this for the author. You know, he's never given this talk before. He wants to see how it looks, and and make corrections and improvements. And well. All right, so I was allowed to set up while it went through the bureaucracy, and eventually, then there's a mid-level person there who's in charge of the meeting, but she can't make the decision, so they have to wait for the mucky muck from downstairs to come up, and ultimately they determined, no, I cannot videotape.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm only focused on him, but their theory was that I would need to get a sign-off from everybody in the room to use their image, but I'm not even using their images. I mean, it made no sense whatsoever, but that was their rule, and that was it. Now, he's spoken at countless libraries in the past, and I've recorded some of them, and C-SPAN has recorded them. I imagine they would have kicked the C-SPAN cameras out of there. Can you believe this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a public event. People get up and ask questions. Anyway, his presentation was terrific. It was completely off the cuff. with questions, it ran for about an hour and a half. Every bit of it was interesting. People asked very interesting questions, and he gave them very interesting answers. Some completely off the topic, but he, you know, he knows his city of New York. He knows all the gangsters involved, and he's figured out how he ran this scam and how he fixed the World Series. It's really good stuff.
Now, you know, Monday is the date that they're going to announce the electees for this year's Hall of Fame class on Monday.
I did not know that.
It's Monday.
Who's up this year?
Well, there's some good ones up this year. You got Barry Larkin, Alan Trammell, Jeff Bagwell is up. And yesterday on the baseball channel, they had a program, it's a nightly program, it's called Clubhouse Confidential, where they do cybernetics of baseball stats. And they were talking about this class. And there was discussion, should those people next year, because there's eight or nine of them come up next year who are from the steroid era, should they be looked at to be inducted into the Hall of Fame based upon their accomplishments? And
well, they have to be looked at. You can also reject them.
Right. And the discussion with one of the experts there, who actually does have a vote in the election, said, well, you know, 100 years ago or so, when you had the Black Sox scandal, they denied those men any opportunity because they were involved in something illegal, but yet something that was very prevalent at the time, according to records, that gambling on baseball was a very common practice. But at some point they put their foot down and said no, and for the last 100 years the answer's been no. Do we need to do that today with those players who are under suspicion to have taken steroids during their playing career and just put our foot down and say, no, that's totally unacceptable? And do we know who these people actually are?
Well, that's an important question.
That's right. And who among those early inductees into the Hall of Fame, Cobb, Mathewson, Hannes Wagner, I mean, they were playing during that era, and you know the reputations they had, not the most easily people to get along with, most famous being Joe Jackson, who was part of the Black Sox scandal, who without that would surely been a Hall of Fame.
He's still got like the third highest batting average, lifetime batting average in history.
You know, and do we need to just say, you know, these gentlemen are not going to be eligible, and we're not going to vote for them, they're not going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame based upon them playing and exhibiting some of the features that are associated with steroids. And Bagwell was the one they were talking about the most last night because he's coming up now.
I got it.
There you go. No, that's not wrong. No, that's not City Hall.
Oh no, Thursday, excuse me,
She's
yesterday.
probably listening. She probably couldn't get to her phone. She couldn't get off of Facebook quick enough to get a call in. And so anyhow, Monday they're going to be announcing this year's class. They were talking that Larkin, probably going to be inducted.
Was Bagwell linked to the steroids?
He was playing that. He was through there, directly linked, like McGuire and Bonds, maybe not, but yet, Palmera's in that group. He's going to be, and when you look at strictly at numbers, these guys have numbers that match up. Barry Larkin, who they were saying was going to be a first rounder based upon his performance, went through there, but he was never linked with it.
Right.
But is he clouded by it? Yeah, he is clouded by it, and there's people.
Well, you're never going to get a pure decision on these things. Even now, we don't know whether any of the early inductees threw games with gamblers or anything like that. We don't know. We don't know.
By association.
And I think if we found out, we might actually consider throwing them out if we learned that happened. I mean, Michael and I disagree on this. Because he thinks people should get in strictly on their performances. And one of the, but it's very clear in the Hall of Fame qualifications that there is a character component to it. And you can ignore the character component to your peril, I think, and to the peril of the game. And I think it's I think it's far greater a lesson to the kids coming up that Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame and why he's not in the Hall of Fame than it would be to say, here's a guy you got to look up to for his great batting skills. I think it's, you know, you ought to be able to say, yeah, here's a guy you can look down to and see where he could have been if he didn't. And you know,
and in baseball of the great halls of fame is the one I think stands head and shoulders above the others, because they do have a quantitative way to compare player to player. Do they measure up to these other ones who have been inducted? And they do have criteria with the character component to say, you know what, he brought discredit to himself and to the game, therefore he's not a Hall of Famer.
Right.
You know, it's going to be a tough call, but there's a lot of these guys, you know, have put their foot down and say, I'll never vote for McGuire because of what he did. You know, are there enough people who are part of the electorals to prevent him from getting in? And at some point in time, 30 years from now, when they may go to the old timers committee, will those players say, yeah, we probably should beat him because he did have what he did? But I am of the opinion that they shouldn't. It just, you know, yeah, and McGuire probably wouldn't be labeled like that if he had just been honest.
Yeah.
Okay? American people, as has often been said, are very forgiving people. Say you did it, I'll forgive it. We teach our children that. You know, the punishment comes up not just because they didn't tell me the truth.
Right.
Honesty is an important thing.
And in the early cases, like McGuire's, there were no rules prohibiting this stuff at the time. Okay? And I think you can take that into consideration if they're honest. But to pretend I didn't do it and then you find out they did, and you know,
They had
and I've always felt the steroid thing is, if you get down to the basic level, it's kind of problematic because a lot of things are allowed. A guy breaks has a fracture in his foot, and you shoot him up with Novocaine so that he can push off and finish the game, right?
Yeah.
That's acceptable, okay? Protein supplements, this, that, and the other thing. Training program,
Take care.
you know, bulking up and all this stuff. Certain things are acceptable and certain things are not. Well, what's the difference with the steroids? There really isn't one, other than the dangers involved, you know,
illegal,
and then they've been made illegal, and for good reason. The human growth hormone was not something that was illegal, at least not initially, and they were finding it was useful in speeding along repairs to muscle repair and things like that. So I mean, you go to the doctor, you go to the trainer, you do whatever you can to get yourself fixed up so that you're back in the game. And at some point, there's a line in there, and in some respects, it's an arbitrary line. However, you know, once they've made the determination, no, in order to keep a level playing field, we're not going to encourage our ball players to take things that are dangerous to themselves and their progeny, and every little kid who's trying to emulate them. That's a legitimate function of baseball to do that. They've done that, and for these guys to continue to flaunt that, you know, throw them out. That's what I say.
I agree with you.
And I think that sets the Hall of Fame apart from the other one.
Yep.
You know, and you know, I see every year they have the football Hall of Fame inductees, and I'm looking, I'm like, yeah, he's a good player, but it's not the Hall of the Good.
Yeah.
It's the Hall of Fame. People who were head and shoulders above their peers when they played.
It's almost a Congressional Medal of Honor thing.
Almost.
Yeah.
Almost.
Above and beyond the call.
Yeah. So that's Monday. So going to have a live announcing of the inductees. So tune that on 2:30 on the baseball channel to see who gets in.
I see you got some paperwork with you. What's the...
Yeah, I got a little behind on getting my quotes, so I had to hustle around it this morning, and I wasn't able to memorize. So I've got two I think that are pertinent. No one can read our Constitution without concluding the people who wrote it wanted their government severely limited. The words "no" and "not" employed in restraint of government power occurred 24 times in the first 7 articles of the Constitution and 22 more times in the Bill of Rights. It kind of tells you what the guys were thinking when they put this whole thing together.
You can't do this, you can't do that.
You know, and Obama with his appointment the other day is absolutely ludicrous. It is not a national emergency. It was not something that had to be done today and tell you to take care of it. It was a way to try to circumvent the process that we support.
Not tried to, he completely trampled on the Constitution, which says he shall not make an appointment without the advice and consent of the Senate. Okay? And you know, the Congress created these positions with that provision, and he has completely flaunted it. He's allowed to make recess appointments, and he's admitted that these are not recess appointments because the Congress is not in recess. So he's admitted that he's completely violated the Constitution by making these appointments. So it's actually an impeachable offense because it's a complete violation of the separation of powers of the Constitution. And he rightly figures that nobody's going to impeach him over this small issue of these small boards. But you know what? He ought to be, and they ought to start with the budget process and remove any funds for these departments until such time as he conforms with them. These people should not be paid by the Treasury. There's no legal basis for their appointments, and any decisions they make should be ignored. That's where I start. And in fact, they could not survive a court fight if that happened. I don't see how they could survive a court fight. He had no right to make the appointments. If they now make decisions that negatively affect the party can take them to court. It's a total waste of expense and nonsense, and everybody knows it. And yet he goes ahead and does it because he considers himself the king.
He's above the law.
Outrageous. Absolutely. It was the most outrageous abuse of power in this century. Or the last.
Why are they going to let him get away with it?
It's a new book.
Well, I don't know what the alternatives are. Who's they? The media's already letting him get away with it. The Washington Post is praising him. Who? The Washington Post is praising him for doing this.
You know, and you look at the creation of his other departments he's had with the czars of this and the czars of that, it just goes against the grain of everything that we stand for. To take out of the hands of the electorate the ability to choose those who make the laws and who run the country. It's wrong, and he's worse than FDR.
Yep.
You know, and
yep.
He's worse than that.
Yep.
I mean, he can tell a corporation that they have to get rid of their CEO and he appoints someone else. I mean, I never heard of such a thing.
Right.
That's like.
You probably see me on a Saturday or
That's
Sunday.
like Homo going down to the GE and say, look, we don't want that guy as your CEO.
You know what that's called? It's called fascism. That's exactly what it is.
Isn't that something like Hitler did in the late 30s?
Yeah. Oh, you got another quote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
It'll be all right.
Why nationalize industry when you can nationalize the people?
Yeah.
Who said that? Adolf Hitler. And we're living through the proof of that in our borders in this country today.
Wow.
It's unreal what he's been getting away with.
And the power that have been given to different agencies to dictate lives and industry and process
Hit or miss.
and everything that we hold dear
Do your best to keep going.
is worse. An agency can close you down. An agency can eliminate you.
Yep.
They can eliminate your industry. You just look at, I'll bet you Bob Golding's got 6 things on him right now that's been regulated in some shape or fashion
Absolutely.
because of an agency.
6. I'm sure it's a lot more than that. I've got
Oh, you're
socks
bigger
on.
than I am. Okay, right, okay. So you got more. It's just,
I'm not Ronnie Barone.
yeah, you wear socks here.
I know. I wear socks with my tuxedo.
Yeah, yeah. It's just, it is fascism, it is communism, and it's socialism. It's the worst of every ism there is, except the worst of capitalism, because we no longer have capitalism in this country.
Now, speaking of fascism, as we often do, I had to get up really early Wednesday morning to go to New York.
Money's this, money's that, you gotta have the money.
But I couldn't resist checking out
When they started
Rick Santorum's
spending their
essentially victory speech from Iowa, because several people had already commented on the internet on how great it was. And so I watched it. It was like 20 minutes long.
And,
It was fabulous. And he starts out by, it starts out by thanking his wife, God, and the people of Iowa in that order. But he goes on to tell the story of why he chose to start his campaign on a certain courthouse step in Pennsylvania. He says, I never lived here. Right? I don't think it was part of his congressional district. He said, this is where my grandfather came when he left Italy. And he starts telling the story about how his grandfather decided he couldn't live under Mussolini, under fascism. And so he came to this country ahead of his family, he could set things up. And it was a great American story in a way. Because the guy ends up working in the coal mines until he's 72, and he's talking about how big his hands were. He's a little kid leaning up over at the coffin and seeing his grandfather's hands. It was just a magnificent talk, given from the heart, without a note, and he ends it up 20 minutes later with and this is why I'm running for president, because I don't want this country to turn into the one my grandfather fled from. It was beautifully woven in. And not too many people commented on that, but he's absolutely right about that. He's absolutely right, because if you want to look at a trend to where this country is going, that's what it is. It's Mussolini fascism. And the worst kind of, it made the trains run on time.
Yeah, but yet had no place to go.
By the way, I researched this one time. You know how Mussolini made the trains run on time?
Change the clocks?
Virtually correct. You are virtually correct. What he did is he just changed the schedules. So instead of allowing for an hour to get from here to there, he allowed for an hour and a half. So
we were on time.
All right. And now the trains run on time. They're not running any faster. You're not getting there any faster than you were before. But that was it. That was a good part of Mussolini.
So what's going to happen in New Hampshire?
Going up there this weekend.
You are?
Yeah.
Are you stumping for somebody or observing?
No, you're observing. I'm observing. Once again, I'm going with David, Patricia. And we did this 4 years ago. National Review has a debate night program that they did 4 years ago in New Hampshire, and it was fabulous. At that time, they had Mark Stein, Rob Long, who used to write for Cheers, and Jonah Goldberg. Just a 3-person panel discussing the issues of the day before the debate came on, and we'd all watch the debate on the big screen, and then they'd do a follow-up afterwards. Well, it was the most hilarious night of my life, and I wrote about it afterwards, and Mark Stein actually linked to the judging report. That is, I've never laughed so hard since I saw the producers of the original cast on Broadway, and as a matter of fact, he made that his headline on Mark Stein's homepage. I got like 3,000 hits over 2 days on the Judge Report, and I'm like, what the heck is this? And they're all going to see by National Review. Well, they're doing it again. Mark Stein's not going to be there this time because he lives in New Hampshire. I don't know why. So they got somebody else taking his place. But it should be entertaining. When we were there 4 years ago, the other half of the ballroom was occupied by a group of phony union people. In other words, people who have been bussed in to yell and cheer for Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is speaking in the next room. And we had the opportunity to watch the union thugs rehearsing their cheering before. Okay, now when he comes in, you got to go like this. Yay! Now go ahead, show me what you're going to do. They go, yay! That they had no emotion whatsoever. They're just doing what they're told. You know? Yeah. Anyway, at one point, Clinton had to interrupt his speech because the laughter from the National Review room was so loud that they couldn't even collect his thoughts. So we did something. We shut Bill Clinton up for a couple of minutes. But we're going to go up early enough. I'm sure we're looking into the campaign events that are going on, because I'm sure since the debate's going to be in the Manchester area, that there's undoubtedly going to be personal appearances by some of the candidates. So we're going to see what we can catch and try to catch the pulse of the thing. So that'll be fun. So what do I think is going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'd be shocked if Romney didn't carry New Hampshire. But I gotta say, the Santorum surprises, and all I've been reading about is how much money Romney has, and how he's a prohibitive favorite because of all the money he's raised. And yet, he spent like $8 million in Iowa and got exactly the same number of votes, virtually, as the guy who spent $26,000. Santorum is spending $31,000 in New Hampshire. He spent $26,000 in Iowa. I think Santorum benefits hugely from this win, because by winning in Iowa, he becomes the primary non-Romney. The interesting thing, Romney can't seem to advance behind his 25, 26%, 27, depending. Yeah, a few people drop out, he's going to pick up that. If Huntsman drops out, I'm sure he's going to pick up some of the Mormon vote that's going to Huntsman. I don't know, whatever. But to me, the big story really is how badly he's doing. I mean, instead of people coalescing around him, if anything, he seems to be
Driving people away.
Now, 4 years ago, McCain drew the inside straight. He was in a very similar situation. And he managed to just hang in there long enough and win these different primaries with like 28, 27% of the vote, because the others were split. And a lot of them back then were winner-take-all primaries. And even though the vast majority of the people who voted in the primaries were not fans of McCain, and in fact, the more people dropped out, the higher the vote against him became, because I mean, even Ron Paul was starting to draw big numbers toward the end because he was the last one standing. Romney became the anti-McCain. Romney became the conservative alternative 4 years ago, because he had the money to keep going. But he's in a similar situation, except they've changed the rules a lot. And most of the primaries are no longer winner-take-all; they're proportional. So if you start splitting up, a few for Perry, a few for Santorum, a few for Gingrich, a few for whoever, makes a difference. The Bachmann vote, I think, goes entirely to Santorum, or virtually entirely to Santorum, such as it was.
Based upon these rule changes, and if things continue to play out like they have, is this going to be a convention nomination?
Boy, it would be fun if it was. It would be fun if it was. Because we haven't had one of those in a long, long, long time. Particularly in the Republican Party. There was, sort of won in '52, and there have been things that have gone down to the wire, but no, I mean, there's been nothing like this. And of course, in the old days, there weren't that many primaries. Now the primaries kind of decide everything. So in the primary era, it would be incredible if it went to the convention, because usually you can get enough delegates without even talking to the party bosses.
He may not.
But he may not. He may not. And I don't think Gingrich is out of it. I mean, he's sunk a lot, but he's got a lot of support other places. I think Santorum gets a huge bounce out of this. He's certainly raised a lot of money fast. He raised $1 million a day.
But if he doesn't get a big bump out of this, then I think the view's going to change.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think what happens in New Hampshire is not all that relevant. I think you're going to see Santorum jump. I don't expect him to be anywhere near being the winner. But he could be. New Hampshire's done strange things in the past.
You can finish a close second. And
it's very fluid, and that gets everybody else out of the way. I think what you're seeing now is maybe Gingrich is just staying in for the fun of getting even with Romney for the trashing that Romney gave him in Iowa.
What about McCann's recommendation for Romney?
I think it's meaningless. Who does that deliver? You know? Other than it's, okay, we've patched up our personal differences, that's about it. Now, one of the I think it was a Washington Post reporter on that event, noted several interesting things. One was that McCain hardly mentioned Romney in Iowa until the last sentence of his speech about the future of America. The second one was how ill-prepared Romney was to receive the endorsement because he just went into his standard stump speech, during which McCain visibly checked his watch. Apparently it was a long-winded stump speech. Visibly checked his watch, much like President George H.W. Bush did in his debate with Bill Clinton, which I found charming and other people found quite annoying. And disrespectful. But then the other thing was that before Romney was done, all but 2 or 3 rows of the audience had already put their coats on and were heading for the door. Now, this is your personal rally. Plus, he had kind of lost control of it because they had let some Occupy people in there who were making some interruptions. So, for the vaunted beautiful organization. In Iowa, Romney did all the basics because he's got the money to do the basics. They identified every potential voter in Iowa, and found everyone that said they were going to vote for Romney and made sure they got to the polls. Okay? They did all that stuff. And still came out either 8 votes ahead or 12 votes behind, depending on how you count the Appaloosa County results, or whatever it was called, where they claimed that Romney was credited with 20 more votes than he actually got. So, any way you look at it,
She won both showcases.
That wasn't good for Romney.
it does not bode well for his future. Right? But on the other hand, he's got enough money to go the distance. But he's a guy who does not work and play well with others.
He's got a mean streak.
He does have a mean streak, and he doesn't have a long history of going out there and doing the rah-rah for anybody but himself. And he's virtually the biggest negative he has right now is he is virtually nobody's second choice.
With the $200 price.
There are any number of the other people rise or fall. Well, if I don't vote for this one, I'll vote for that one. Da 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 da. Romney is nobody's second choice. So if somebody else fails, it doesn't benefit him. It only hurts him. And I mean, his strategy all along was to build up Bachmann.
Oh, yeah.
and then destroy her later. And you know, for conspiracy theorists, the fact that Bachmann viciously attacked everybody else in the campaign except Romney seems to indicate that she was a hankering for a vice presidential nomination.
Use the car because that's something practical.
Yeah, it's like a baseball playoff. One plays number 8 because you want number 8 to win if you want to play them. You don't want to play 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6.
Right, exactly.
And he was hoping the worst one gets through to play against me.
Yeah, first you build her up to knock Palin down. Then you build her up so that the anti-Romney candidate doesn't emerge because she'll be the easiest one to beat in the long run. I don't know what Perry's up to. I mean, first he goes back to reassess his campaign, and 2 hours later, hey, I'm back in it. You know.
But I don't know how much heart and soul he's got in it until now.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's just thinking, you know, stay loose, see what happens. You know, he's already raised the money. Might as well.
Isn't there something peculiar about spending $10 million to get a $250,000 job?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess is Romney a billionaire or something? I mean, he's got all kinds of money.
Once they get
One of the interesting
the
things,
insider trading.
His main capital is,
That rebound is a nice thing.
oddly enough, one of the principal owners of MSNBC. And they've started. They just started the last few days doing disclosures. We should disclose that Romney owns the company.
Now that could be a conflict of interest.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah. Well, they all like to think they own the media, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly our mayor does.
Yeah, but what's 4 sheets of paper?
No, I'm not saying she does. I think she wants to own the media.
That's why they made it into a tabloid.
Now, you know, we didn't discuss this last week, but there had been a rumor floating around, and it was a solid rumor, that she wanted a resolution to appoint the Mohawk Valley Independent as the official newspaper of the city of Amsterdam to carry all the legal notices. Yeah. Because she's mad at the recorder.
Mad at everybody.
She's mad at everybody. Anyway, I guess she didn't get much support from the council on that, so it didn't
The
happen.
recorder is still the official paper.
Yeah, recorder's the official paper of record. I'm sure they stayed awake nights worrying about that.
Leave her alone.
Carter's been getting a little feisty lately, huh?
Yeah.
Jamaican or marshmallow cream?
Something got under his car.
Yeah.
Something got under his car. Yeah.
I mean, two editorials in a week on the Corporation Council.
Yeah.
And that didn't even mention the wife's raise he had put in this part, too. All right. Yeah. Remind me to tell you something off the record. This thing keeps, I don't know whether the live is going out or not. It looks like it is, but yet it never seems to advance. I don't know. Let's see what else has been going on.
Cuomo gave his State of the Union address this week, and he has things he wants to accomplish are nowhere near as ambitious as what he's done before, or what he did this past year. He's looking at education to
He's for it?
He's for education. Yeah.
Good.
He's trying to get that straightened out, because there's a lot of money at stake in New York State right now for the state to have all the schools, all the school districts in the union build these evaluation tools, in which accountability is going to be partly fall on the shoulders of the results of students on standardized testing, and the unions are dragging their feet, and they're not going to be able to get the money if they don't have it done. It's supposed to be done last week, and it'll be on an extension for another 10 days.
Why is the unions involved in this? Why isn't it the administration?
Well, it is.
Administration doing it.
The unions don't want it because if a lot of your students fail, I can use that as an evaluation tool and perhaps end up getting rid of you for being a poor teacher.
I understand that, but why, I think Jim's question is why that's an administrative decision. They don't answer to the unions on this. There's no contract provision about this, is there?
Well, in order to receive this money from the feds, part of the agreements that the districts had to send in had to be signed off by the union. The districts that sent it in without the sign off from the unions to build this were excluded from the fund. Now they have to come up with a plan in order to get that money, and the unions are trying to have a larger say in the formation of these tools for evaluation than what the districts want to get, because it's more of an administrative function rather than an employee function. And that was one of the things that hinkied up the school budget this year. Was the union were supposedly going to give $1 million some dollars in concessions if they were going to have a X amount of input into this evaluative tool. And the superintendent at that time said no, so the union didn't do that. So that's what it's coming down to. And New York, how many millions of dollars? 30. There's 30.
Well, the teachers union owns the Democratic Party, so I don't expect Washington to give them too much of a problem about that in the long run. However much noise
the unions shouldn't be involved at all.
That's the last 2 hours of the show.
All right, we've had enough technical difficulties for one day. We've had the sound go off, we've had the power go off, we've had the camera go off, we've had the live broadcast go off, and accordingly, I think we fulfilled our obligation to our fans. And I don't know what the show is going to look like after I edit it together, but whatever happens, we're very happy that you tuned in for this most remarkable historical show with no name, and we'll be back again next week. Gavin Burnett, Jim Nicosia, myself.
Friday the 13th.
On Friday the 13th.
So I don't know if I'm coming.
We're going to come and we're going to break all the mirrors and everything else. So we'll be back again next week, ladies and gentlemen, with more of the show with no name.